She drove him home in the dark, woke up early for him, and he called her entitled over a $25 meal. He spent $70 on Pokemon cards the same afternoon he had a meltdown over a $25 dinner that he offered to buy. Let that sink in for a second. She had driven out of her way, woken up early, lent him her car twice, bought him coffee, and followed his broken-down car home at under 20 miles per hour in the dark, and the moment she accepted something he voluntarily put on the table, she became the villain of the story. This is one of those situations where the more you learn, the more your jaw drops. Because on the surface it sounds like a small argument over a restaurant order, but when you pull back and look at the full picture, this is actually about something much deeper than a meal. It is about how some people treat generosity like a resource they are entitled to drain, and how the second that generosity costs them anything at all, suddenly it was never really generosity to them in the first place. So here is how the whole thing started. Her coworker and ex, a 21-year-old guy, had his car break down on the way to work one morning. She was only a few minutes away when he texted her. She immediately offered to come get him, without pausing to calculate what it would cost her in time or energy. He said no at first because he did not want to leave his car unattended on the side of the road, which is fair enough, so she kept driving toward work, which was a full 30-minute commute. Then about 10 minutes later, he changed his mind and called her back asking if she could still come. By that point she had already crossed a bridge over a lake. That means she had to make a full U-turn and backtrack, adding 15 extra minutes to her own drive, retracing ground she had already covered just to circle back to someone who had initially turned down her help. She did it anyway. No complaints. No sighing into the phone. No passive comment about how far she had already gone. She just turned around, because that is the kind of person she was being in this situation. Because of that detour, both of them ended up arriving at work 25 minutes late. That is not a small thing. Being late to work has real consequences, especially for younger people building their reputations, and she accepted that consequence without making him feel bad about it for even a second. She did not pull out a mental ledger and note it down. She did not bring it up with coworkers or make a face in his direction for the rest of the shift. She just absorbed it and moved on, quietly folding his inconvenience into her own day like it was nothing. That already tells you a lot about the kind of person she is in this dynamic, and it tells you something about how he tends to receive her effort too, which becomes very relevant later. That same night, his car started working again, but he was nervous about driving it home alone in case something went wrong a second time. He did not want to be stranded after dark. And what did she do? She offered to follow him. Not ride with him. Not sit in the passenger seat and keep him company. Follow behind him in her own separate car with her hazard lights on, driving it under 20 miles per hour for around 20 minutes through the dark, just so he would feel safe and not alone on the road. Think about what that actually looks like. A person sitting alone in their own car, hazards blinking orange, creeping along well below the speed limit, watching the taillights ahead to make sure nothing goes wrong. The patience that takes. The quiet, uncelebrated kindness of it. That is not an obligation anyone could hold her to. That is just genuine care wearing ordinary clothes. The next morning she woke up a full hour earlier than her normal schedule so she could pick him up and get him to work again, because his car still was not something he trusted. Her shift started at 11:30 and his started at noon, so she was not even doing it because their schedules aligned perfectly or because it was convenient for her. She adjusted her entire morning, reset her alarm, rearranged her routine, and went to get him. That is the kind of favor you ask of someone you are very close to, someone who has signed up for a level of involvement in your life. And she gave it without being asked twice. While they were at work that day, he asked to borrow her car to get breakfast. She said yes. He came back with cheap breakfast wraps for both of them, around $3 each, and she even offered to pay him back for hers because she did not want him to feel like she was taking advantage of the errand. He said it was fine. Later that day she noticed he seemed like he wanted coffee, reading the mood the way you only do when you are paying close attention to someone, so she offered to buy him one too. That round came to about $11. Then he asked to borrow her car a second time, and this time he came back with a Pokemon card box that costs over $70. Not a necessity. Not something he had been saving toward. Not a planned purchase squeezed out of a tight budget. A deliberate, recreational splurge made in the middle of a stressful week, with someone else's car, while that someone else had just bought him coffee. This detail matters more than it might seem at first because it completely dismantles the argument he makes later about being budget-conscious. That evening he told her he had found another ride home, so she went out to a park event with her dogs. She was finally off the clock, so to speak. She had her animals, she was breathing fresh air, she was doing something for herself for what was probably the first time in 2 days. Then at 9 in the evening he texted her asking if she could actually come pick him up after all. She left the event. She said goodbye to whatever relaxation she had managed to collect. She put her dogs up, got back in her car, and drove 30 minutes back to get him, in the dark, without complaint. You just cannot keep track of how many times she rearranged her own life in a 48-hour window for this one person. The U-turn after the bridge. The late arrival at work. The slow dark drive home with hazards on. The early morning wake-up. Lending her car twice. The coffee she bought because she noticed he wanted one. Leaving a social event with her dogs at 9 at night. Every single one of those things was a choice she made in his favor. Every single one came at some cost to her, in time, in sleep, in freedom, in the ordinary comfort of her own routine. On the drive back after picking him up that evening, he offered to either pay for gas or take her to dinner. She had not eaten yet. They get employee discounts at the restaurant. She chose dinner. That is a completely logical decision made by someone running on fumes who had been putting everyone else first all day. She looked at the menu and found herself torn between a $14 meal and a $25 meal she had been wanting to try for a while. She even said out loud, unprompted, that she felt guilty ordering the more expensive option. She gave him the opening to say anything, to redirect her, to set a boundary. His response was 2 words. Up to you. So she ordered it. And she planned to cover part of the tip regardless, because that is just who she is. Here is where it all unravels. After dinner the energy shifted. That particular silence that settles in when someone is holding something against you and has decided not to say it directly yet. She felt it immediately and asked him twice if something was wrong. He said no both times, which is its own kind of cruelty, making her sit in discomfort while denying its existence. Then came the passive-aggressive comment. He said he did not understand why she ordered the $25 meal after she had mentioned maybe going cheaper. She was exhausted in a way that goes bone deep after 2 days of giving and adjusting and showing up, and she did not have the energy to defend something she had every right to do, so she just said, "You are right, it will not happen again." That response alone is telling. She capitulated immediately, not because she believed she was wrong, but because she was too drained to go another round. She swallowed her own justification and handed him the win just to end the discomfort. And that exhaustion is completely understandable when you realize how much she had been giving over the past 2 days while apparently being held to an invisible standard she was never told about. Hours later he texted asking if she wanted to talk. She explained calmly that she thought a $25 meal was reasonable given everything she had done. She laid it all out clearly, not with bitterness but with the quiet clarity of someone who has finally stopped minimizing her own contributions. The extra driving. The early morning. The car loans. The coffee. The hazard light escort. The late night pickup at 9 when she had finally, briefly, been doing something for herself. She also pointed out that he had been the one to offer dinner in the first place, and that she had already turned down gas money twice before accepting anything, meaning she had actively tried to avoid taking from him. His response was to call her entitled. He said she had only picked the expensive meal to get a reaction out of him, which is a remarkable accusation to make against someone who had been quietly helping him all day and had voiced her own guilt about the choice out loud before making it. He said that when he helps people, he does not put a price tag on it. He said all she had done was go out of her way twice. Twice. When we just counted at least 7 separate acts of help across 2 days. He also said she was not being considerate of his budget because of the car situation. The same budget that had no problem absorbing a $70 Pokémon card box earlier that afternoon. Okay. I genuinely cannot let that slide. He spent more than double the cost of her dinner on trading cards, then turned around and lectured her about being inconsiderate of his finances. That is not a logical argument. That is not a person who is genuinely stressed about money. That is just someone looking for a reason to be angry, reaching for the nearest available justification and not caring that it collapses the moment you look at it. She got angry. And she had every right to. She told him she did not think she was acting entitled at all, reminded him of everything she had done, and said it felt disrespectful that he actually believed she had chosen a meal specifically to provoke him. She also said it hurt that the moment she accepted something he volunteered, all of her effort just vanished in his mind. All of it erased by one dinner choice. His final explanation was that he was upset because she had considered the cheaper option first and then changed her mind, and he called that pulling the rug out from under him. He also claimed she apparently does this every time he offers her something. So now there is a pattern being assigned to her, a narrative that frames her generosity as some kind of manipulation strategy, and her acceptance of a single dinner offer as a calculated move. This is a person who spent 2 days being driven, housed in borrowed vehicles, followed home for safety, woken someone up early, had someone leave a park at night for him, and his main takeaway is that she owes him the courtesy of always ordering the cheapest thing on the menu when he makes an offer he apparently does not mean as fully as he lets on. The update to this story deserves its own moment. She went quiet. She ignored his texts and gave herself the silence she had earned. He filled that silence by sending casual car updates like nothing had happened, just chatty little messages about the vehicle situation, which is its own kind of emotional weirdness, acting normal while the wound he made is still sitting there open. Then when he sensed her pulling away for real, when the access he had been taking for granted started to feel genuinely threatened, he asked to talk and eventually apologized. And her read on that apology is sharp. She told him that the timing makes it feel like he is only apologizing because he is losing access to her. Not because he genuinely understood what he did. Not because he sat alone with it, felt the full weight of how unfair he had been, and came back with something real. Because she stopped being available, and that scared him. Now for the verdict, and this one is clear. She is not the bad guy here. Not even a little. She accepted a dinner that he offered, on a night when she had not eaten, after 2 full days of going above and beyond for a person who then tried to rewrite the entire story to make her look calculating. The entitlement in this situation has exactly one address, and it is not hers. He expected unlimited help, unlimited access to her car, unlimited flexibility with her time, and he expected all of it to be accepted with zero compensation and zero acknowledgement. The moment she accepted $25 worth of food that he put on the table himself, the whole arrangement suddenly had a price tag according to him. But only her part of it. The Pokémon card detail is not a minor aside. It is the centerpiece of the entire story. A person who is genuinely worried about money during a stressful situation does not make a $70 recreational purchase the same afternoon. He was not budget conscious. He was scorekeeping. He wanted the power of having made an offer without the reality of having to follow through on it at a cost he did not control. She said she hopes she can move on without it affecting her job, and that is the only part of this that stings on her behalf. She gave this person 2 days of real, tangible, inconvenient effort. She turned her car around after crossing a bridge. She crawled behind him in the dark with her hazards on. She left an evening out with her dogs to go pick him up. And now she has to see him at work and carry the weight of his disappointment that she ordered the salmon instead of the salad. She deserves better than this dynamic. She deserves people who meet her where she is. And if his apology was genuine, he needs to actually show that in his actions over time, not just say the words the moment he realized she was done. My coworker blamed me publicly for her own mistake, so I pulled up the security camera footage. 10:10 p.m. Claude Respondio. She got blamed publicly in a work group chat for something she did not do. She got blamed publicly in a work group chat for something she did not do. Not in a private message. Not in a quiet conversation. In front of everyone. And when she had literal video evidence sitting in a security camera, she used it. That is the kind of situation that makes your stomach drop the moment you read that first message in the morning. You wake up, you check your phone, and there it is. A public call-out. Your name attached to a mistake that is not yours. That specific mix of confusion and anger and disbelief is hard to describe. You read it once thinking you misunderstood. Then you read it again and realize you understood perfectly. And the worst part is that everyone else on that thread already read it before you did. Here is the full picture. She works somewhere that uses 3 large sugar syrup tanks. The system is straightforward. 2 are connected at all times. 1 has a stopper in it so it stays out of rotation until it is needed. When the active tank runs dry, you swap it out with the backup and move the stopper accordingly. It is the kind of process that becomes muscle memory after you have done it enough times. Simple enough that doing it wrong would actually require a specific choice, not just a lapse in attention. After a 4-day weekend, she came back to work, used the tank without the stopper exactly the way she was supposed to, and it did not run out so no swap was needed. Standard shift. Nothing unusual. She went home that night having done everything right, with no reason to think the next morning would bring anything other than a normal day. The next morning she woke up to a text from a coworker named Elle, and this text was not sent privately. It was posted in the group chat, visible to everyone on the team, stating that both tanks had been left empty. Elle did not ask what happened. Elle did not send a private message to check in or get clarification before making a public statement. Elle put it in the group chat, with a full audience already assembled. There was no question mark at the end of it. No gentle inquiry. Just a public statement implying she had left the tanks empty, with everyone watching. And here is the important detail that the story quietly slips in. Elle's best friend, a coworker named N, was the morning shift that day. The shift right after hers. Meaning someone else had access to those tanks between her shift and that accusation, and it was the best friend of the person doing the accusing. That detail does not get addressed in the group chat. It just sits there, quietly significant. She did not blow up. She did not go line by line through the accusation or start pointing fingers at N or demand to know why L was posting accusations before gathering any information at all. She kept it light and said she would check the tanks when she got there. She absorbed the public blame without confirming it was her fault, but also without creating a scene. That is a measured response from someone who is almost certainly more rattled than she is letting on. Choosing restraint when you are publicly embarrassed by something you did not do takes real composure. But she was watching now. Something had shifted in how she understood this workplace. A week goes by. N is on morning shift again. This time she already knows the dynamic, so she does something smart before the day even has a chance to go sideways. She checks the tank with the stopper before anything becomes an issue. She is not looking to cause trouble. She is looking to protect herself, because she now understands that protection is something she has to be deliberate about here. And what does she find? The tank with the stopper is empty. Someone had used it all the way down and then put the stopper back in without refilling it, without flagging it, without leaving any note or acknowledgement for the next person coming in. She recorded a video and sent it to the group chat. N responded that she had simply forgotten. The word simply is doing a lot of work there. Because that is exactly what had probably happened the first time too, except that time the blame had been pointed squarely at someone else in a public forum without so much as a question asked first. Forgetting is understandable. Letting someone else absorb the public consequences of your forgetting is something else entirely. Now fast forward one more week. She works the entire weekend. All of it. She clocks in, she shows up, she does her closing tasks with the same care and consistency she always brings. She stalks. She goes through the routine. She does her job, probably tired from a long stretch of consecutive shifts, probably not thinking for even a moment that she would need to prove any of it. Then she wakes up to another message in the group chat. Another accusation. This time saying she did not stalk. She had just given up her entire weekend, and the reward waiting for her on her phone was another public claim that she had failed to do her job. The nerve. She did not explode. She pushed back, and by her own account she tried to do it respectfully, choosing her words carefully even while feeling the frustration of someone who has now been through this more than once. But she also knew with complete certainty that she had done the work. The memory was fresh. So when she got to her shift she went straight to the computer, pulled up the security camera footage from her closing, took pictures of herself clearly doing the stalking, the kind of evidence that leaves absolutely no room for interpretation, and sent them to the group chat. And then, in her words, all hell broke loose. Now some people would say she should have just let it go. That sharing the evidence made things messy, created conflict, stirred up drama that could have settled on its own. And look, she even acknowledges that herself. She wonders aloud if it is a pride issue. She questions whether she needed to do it. That kind of self-reflection says a lot about her character, actually. Most people in that moment would not be questioning themselves at all. But here is the thing. Letting it go was not a neutral option. Staying quiet after a false public accusation does not make the accusation disappear. It makes it stick. Every person who saw that group chat message and did not see a rebuttal walks away thinking she did not stalk. That follows her. That is her reputation at work quietly being chipped away one unanswered accusation at a time. Silence does not protect you from a false narrative. It just leaves the narrative unchallenged. This pattern is not random. Think about what has happened across these three separate incidents. The first accusation lands on her after a shift where L's best friend was the one who came in after her and had direct access to those tanks. The second incident catches N directly and on camera, who admits she forgot. The third accusation hits her again after a full weekend of documented work. There is a clear and consistent pattern where blame gets aimed at her, and the receipts keep pointing somewhere else. At some point that stops being coincidence and starts being something worth naming. She is not being dramatic. She is not being difficult or oversensitive or unable to take feedback. She is a person who keeps getting blamed for things in a public channel in front of all her coworkers, and she had the evidence to show the truth each time she looked for it. She used it. And the fact that sharing that evidence caused chaos says far more about the people who were cornered by the truth than it does about her for having the composure to find it and present it calmly. For the verdict, this is not complicated. She was publicly accused of something she did not do. Not once, not twice, but 3 times, and twice now she has had clear evidence that the accountability should have been landing somewhere else. Using security camera footage that she had every right to access, showing her own work during her own shift, is not a pride issue. It is called defending yourself with facts. The real question this story raises is why the blame keeps landing on her. Because the pattern is not random, it is directional. L makes the accusations publicly. N is consistently nearby when things go wrong. And the solution being implied, that she should just quietly accept being blamed and move on, is only a solution for the people doing the blaming. For her it is not a solution at all. It is a slow accumulation of false reputation damage with no pushback allowed. She ended her post saying she thinks she needs a new job with professional people, and honestly she is right. Not because she did anything wrong, but because no amount of camera footage fixes a workplace where people use the group chat as a weapon and expect you to smile and take it. She has already proven twice that the accusations were wrong. A healthy workplace does not put her in that position in the first place. She deserves coworkers who talk to her like an adult, not a group chat audience waiting for the next public call-out. Get out, document everything until you do, and do not apologize for knowing your own worth. Drop a comment telling me which story hit harder today, and if you are not subscribed yet, hit that button because these stories come out all the time and you do not want to miss them.